Hey everybody, how's it going this evening? Welcome into episode 11. That is 1 of the Fused Relativity podcast. Chris here, and we've got John. How's it going tonight?
Good evening, everyone.
So we had a last minute scratch tonight. Kirk is a little bit under the weather. He was trying real hard to show up, but just wasn't in the cards tonight. So me and John are going to tackle this episode of mano y mano, and we will see. Probably change things up a little bit. Just kind of maybe talk about what we're interested in this week. Um, just a little back and forth. It'll be a little different, but we're going to make it work on the fly. John, how do you feel about that?
Oh, that sounds good. And unfortunately, yeah, this may be a little bit shorter of an episode this week, but we're hoping Kirk is feeling a little bit better later on.
Yeah, well, sometimes you just have to do what you gotta do if you're, puking or whatever. Kind of hard to do a podcast.
Yeah, I work in medical, so I'm well aware people get sick. It happens all the time.
Unfortunately for the people who get sick, of course.
Yes.
Um, so let's kind of start the show with what I originally wanted to start the show with, which is 3D printing. We haven't talked about too much in the last couple of weeks because we've been talking so much about automation and robotics. And I found an interesting story about a local Denver business who is doing metal additive 3D printing, which essentially they're 3D printing with metal. And they've actually been contracted to make submarines for the Navy.
So spaceships for underwater.
Pretty much.
No, I've been.
Um,
I was gonna say I've been looking into additive metal printing for a while, and because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. Mostly, I was looking to make jewelry. Uh, A for my wife, B for my wife to kind of sell because we kind of like the unique jewelry aspect of things.
well, I was reading into it, and it's kind of basically, it's essentially like metal welding in what we understand as an FDM process. And so it's making layers of everything. It's just using hot metal to do it rather than plastic like we use.
Well,
And there's a
there's
lot of uses for it. And clearly we don't know what those uses are, what the potential is, but I mean, they're talking about making submarines, which is, you got to make sure that those things are airtight.
yeah. Well, and I was gonna say there's other ways to do it. From my research, there's two ways to 3D print metal. There's the one you're talking about where it's the FDM tile where they use molten metal and go about in layers just like, our plastic printers do. The other type uses lasers to basically it has a not a sand but a metal powder that's over the bed and it lasers the line and then it scoops more powder on top and then it does the next layer with the laser.
Yeah, so lasers and 3D printing, that's a pretty cool combo.
Yes, I would agree.
Um, as I was looking into what they were doing with the submarines, one of the reasons that they kind of chose that as their, method of making these things was because they could create them specifically with a 3D model of how they wanted to, make this submarine, and it was easily changeable because then they can just go in and change the model. And it's a pretty intuitive process that seems like where they might go with, uh, a lot of other things.
Well, it's I would assume it's a very similar process to what in Ingenuity Space, right?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
Relativity space.
Relativity Space. I would assume it's a very similar way that they're 3D manufacturing their rockets. I mean, like I joked earlier, a submarine is just a spaceship for water, and they essentially hold the same thing. It's to keep pressure inside the vehicle and keep everything that's out of it from getting in, like water or, the vacuum of space.
Both things that you don't want inside your spaceship or submarine.
Not usually, no. But, if you think about it, they share a lot of similarities. Um, I've been watching a series by a YouTube channel called Smarter Every Day, where he spent some time on a submarine that was doing research in the Arctic Ocean. Was it the Arctic or the? I don't remember now. But a lot of the stuff and technology that is useful in a submarine is also applicable to spaceships because you have carbon dioxide scrubbers, you have water generation, although it's a lot easier to generate water under the ocean than in space. But they still have the recycling of water, they have the recycling of everything, and it's very applicable to, say, a spaceship that's going to Mars.
Well, and then under those pretenses, wouldn't you think that, if they're good, if the Navy is giving this company the trust to build them submarines, it kind of lends a little bit more towards the uh, model that you could 3D print a rocket and have it be a viable, piece of transportation.
Yes, but here's so I don't know how much you want to delve into this topic, but um, since I've already mentioned going to Mars, we already have a spaceship that is kind of already, well, it's being flight tested right now, and that's Starship. And that is designed to go to Mars. Now, yes, you could 3D print something small like a Dragon capsule to send to Mars, but then you're dealing with one of the biggest reasons why there hasn't been a manned trip to Mars yet, and that is the farther into space you want to go. So let's say Mars, and let's say the round or the one way trip to get to Mars is, I want to say it's 4 months. Um, you have to take supplies, you know, enough food for 4 months there, however long you're on the planet, and 4 months back. So that's a lot of food, supplies, water, everything you need to take to Mars and back, which we have, or, it's not like that's out of the realm of possibility because the ISS, the space station that's in orbit right now, has gone, you know, a good amount of time without restock. I think it was almost a year. So having enough supplies in one place to last, 6 people, however, the 9 months it would take to get to Mars and back is not necessarily the issue. The problem is with current spacecraft designs, um, like the Dragon. Can the Dragon go to Mars? Yes. Would it be smart to send the Dragon to Mars? No, because there's not that much space on it. Whereas you have the Starship, that's this massive. Um, well, I mean, everyone's seen the Starship rocket, and I want to see if how big Starship is versus a submarine. To what's your guess, Chris?
Um, Compared to a submarine, probably. I mean, I'm going to imagine it's probably close to maybe a little smaller than a sub.
And that's what I'm because I know the Starship itself is 50 meters, but the living space is far less. Length.
And while you're looking at that, I was going to tell you, just because it sparked my memory, that a couple episodes back I had talked about putting tankers up in space on the way so you could potentially refuel. And apparently, that's something that's being tossed around as a opportunity to refuel mid-flight to Mars.
Well, and that's what the moon base is for, or the lunar gate. The problem is it's going off of, once again, the small spacecraft design, like the lunar landers and whatnot. So submarines are about 150 meters long, and I would assume that they are, because Starship is 9 meters, and a submarine is 42 feet. So that's what.
Okay, so I should go back to my metal additive company. They're not making submarines like
Yeah, not.
they're making submersibles, but they're not making, full size.
See, and that's where you kind of lost me too. Was when you said submarine. Excuse me. When you said submarines, I thought you were talking about full on, nuclear subs.
I suppose it's possible, but you would have to have a much bigger operation to make that happen. I apologize. I should have said submersibles rather than submarines.
Yeah, that's what kind of threw me off, because you're like, oh, submarines. I was like, that's kind of impressive that they're building an entire submarine with 3D printing. The submersible makes much more sense.
Yes, that is correct.
But that's still, well, to get back onto why I went on that long diatribe about Mars, was Starship has the capacity to hold. I mean, it's a third of the size of a submarine, and a submarine can be underwater for months without, need to surface or anything like that. And you have a fleet of starships up in the air, or heading to Mars. It has the potential to carry a ton of cargo and people and everything to space, or to Mars.
Well, it'll be I think that's probably the least, well, it's not the least of their worries, but I would imagine when they decide to finally send a crewed mission up to Mars, they're going to have the rations figured out just like they do on the space station. And
Well, that's what kind of what I was going with, was the Starship, I think, has a livable area equivalent to that of the ISS right now. Well, I mean, we know it'll have more because it could potentially house 20 people. The ISS caps out at 10, I think, at the most has ever been there at once.
right, and they have, they're using freeze-dried meal ration packs like MRE style. So it's not like, a meal is taking up a whole lot of space up there.
Yeah, but if you figure, one person, 3 meals a day, minus, snacks and whatever, you're still looking at, for a 4-month trip, five, oh, I can't math, 360 ish meals per person.
Right.
Now, granted, it's obviously going to get lighter the farther out you go, and that was only for 4. So, I mean, for one trip to Mars, you would be looking at 1,000 meals per person, roughly, because you want to have contingencies in case there's issues or delays happen or whatever.
Well, and one of the other stories I came across this week was that they're doing a little research into space farming, like on the spaceships. One, so that they could potentially get food, but also because it's supposedly a morale booster.
Well,
so people wouldn't go stir crazy on a 4-month trip in space.
now that's a good thing to bring up. Another series I watched was. Have you seen anything about the Antarctic base? That's, well, obviously down in the South Pole.
I have not.
So it's if you wanted to think of bleak, desolate landscapes, that would be, one of the worst on the planet right now. But the morale there is surprisingly good, and they equate it a lot to food because, well, being that it's in the South Pole, they only get shipments, I think, during the summer months there, and they have to order a year's worth of food. So, most everything that they eat is off, but because it's the South Pole, you don't really have to worry about freezing stuff. Just leave the warehouse window open and everything in it will be frozen. But they combat morale by giving or by having good food.
Well, and that's really, if you think about it, the only way you're going to have success on a long mission is people can't have food insecurity while they're flying to Mars. It's already going to be a, stressful event. You can't have people wondering if they're going to have enough food to last them the whole trip.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying with space agriculture, I was going to say hydroponics, but I don't think hydroponics would work very well in 0G. Um, but having, good frozen food, which I know is something NASA's worked really, really hard on because they've even had, was it Top Chef that did a freeze dried astronaut challenge?
A few interviews um, from astronauts, and supposedly they have they think the food's pretty good. The only complaint, I think, unanimously, is they just get tired of eating the same things over and over again.
Well, I mean, like anyone would. I know it's kind of a first world problem, but and I should say I meal prep quite a lot because I don't cook during the week. I only cook on the weekends. So I try and get all my cooking for the week done um, during the weekend, and it's just hard to eat the same thing more than a couple days in a row, even if it's something good like baked spaghetti or something to that effect.
Right. Well, I think the biggest part's going to be, people who are volunteering to go to Mars for the first trip, they're going to be in it to win it. It's not like you just do that on a whim. There's a chance you probably, well, more than of a certainty you're never coming back. So,
That depends.
well, theoretically, at this juncture where we're at now, it's probably a one-way trip. So,
See, I don't. I think the first man trip will absolutely be Starship because they've already. I mean, SpaceX winning the contract to go to the moon was just kind of icing on the cake. Like they're going to Mars. That's the whole reason they're building the Starship. And um, the lunar stop is, just extra funding for them. It's not anything that's going to deter from them going to Mars or not. So I think them sending one starship in the potentially in the next Mars window to go to Mars, do some science, and then come back is very high and not out of the realm of possibility. Because you don't need a lot of fuel to get off Mars and heading back towards Earth. You need the fuel to stop when you get to Earth. But again, that's something that SpaceX could easily do, especially if the orbital docking of starships is successful. Because they could theoretically send two starships to Mars, one with fuel, one with astronauts, and after they take off, use the last of the fuel on the one that was carrying the fuel to start heading back to Earth and just land the fuel tanker at the site where they want to start the colony. And then when the next window opens up and they launch 100 or 1,000 starships, you've got a landing zone and you've already got one tanker there that's, or one starship there that's ready to be torn down and used for whatever.
And that still amazes me that their goal is that lofty of getting to 1,000 starships.
I mean, it is, but it isn't. If you look at their previous production, like they only started building spaceships in a field a year and a half ago. And I was going to say they built 15, but they skipped 3. So they've built 12. And they've got another 2 being built. And if you look, they've already filed their FAA flight plan for their suborbital launch because they.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, at the rate it's moving, I'm just, you know, I'm more of a, I don't want to say skeptic than you are, but I'm just, pumping the brakes in my own brain saying, man, these guys, we're just getting excited about putting a helicopter on Mars. And, Elon's trying to take a whole spaceship up there. It's just a little too much for my brain to soak in at this point.
Well, and if you want to make it even worse, if you look at if you look at their production rate, they're making starships like every couple of weeks, and that's only getting faster. I think their goal is to be making, a starship a week to launch, which is the only reason they would need to do that would be for a massive fleet to send to Mars, because their starship, the entire starship platform, the booster, the starship, it's all theoretically reusable. So they don't need to have a massive fleet of rockets like Falcon. If you look at the Falcon 9 was in heavy production for years that they just kept cranking out booster after booster after booster. And that immediately slowed when they started sticking landings and they started being able to reuse boosters for customers' flights that, previously, like NASA said, no, you absolutely cannot use a previously flown booster. And then they landed their one for the 10th time last week. And they landed one today. And when you have stock that is reusable, you don't need a massive production facility or massive production line where you can crank out a new one every day, unless you plan on not bringing those back. Because otherwise, you're just going to end up with a ton of starships sitting in a field somewhere collecting dirt, waiting for their time to launch.
Well, I have no doubt that that's what's going on. I mean, Elon is very good about doing what he kind of says he's going to do, and he's got essentially unlimited funding at this point. So why not?
Well, and that's the other thing that's really unique about it is those starships. In the grand scheme of things, you could say, "Hey, they cost $1 million to make," and to me and you and anyone else, if we were told, "Yeah, you can have a starship for $1 million," that is a lot of freaking money. And while it is a lot of money in the world of space, it's nothing. Because if you look at the previous, like the Atlases or the Saturns or, the shuttle, those cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you can sit there and crank out a new starship every week for $1 million, and you can have a fleet of 100 of them that cost you, $100 million, it is revolutionary in the fact that he's essentially made a cheap, non-disposable rocket.
Well, and it there's just a lot of moving parts, and getting tankers and refueling points and all the food and
Well,
you know
I
that many people.
agree. But like you said, they already proved that they can make not carbon dioxide, oxygen on the moon, Mars. Um, and if I'm not mistaken, it shouldn't be that far of a stretch to turn the carbon dioxide into oxygen and then turn it into methane, which could theoretically be done on any planet with their atmosphere or any planet that has access to ice. Because methane is just, and I need to fact check myself here, but methane is just oxygen and, yeah, or hydrogen and carbon. So it's CH4. So it's 4 hydrogen molecules around a carbon molecule. Carbon's everywhere.
And theoretically, isn't there ice on underneath of Mars?
Oh, there's tons of ice. There's not. It's not even theoretical. They have pictures of it now. They had the one lander that had water residue on it from the morning dew. They have pictures of the sand being blown off and ice being underneath the sand. There's obviously ice caps on Mars. So it's ice is there. I mean, there's ice on the moon, I think. And that's the thing is there's water and all of that everywhere. It's just a matter of getting to it and converting it. Which
Well, I'm sorry I cut you off because I just had the thought to bring up also that China had landed a rover of their own on Mars yesterday evening.
yes, they are the second country with a rover on Mars now.
Yeah, well, I think so. Second country, third rover overall.
Yeah, and sorry about the cough there. I thought I had muted. Because the only other one, because I know not Mars, Russia has made it to Venus. Tons of people have made it to the moon. But yeah, Mars is the tricky one.
It'll be interesting to see because I think they're on the other side. If I saw the map correctly, they landed on the other side of Mars.
Well, yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback they get from their rover compared to what we're seeing with ours.
Yeah, I don't know what scientific equipment they had on theirs. But I don't think it's a. Is it a rover or is it a?
It's a full blown rover.
Okay, it's a lander with a rover attached. Got it. That makes much more sense.
I was reading a story after they launched last night, or after they landed, and they said that they immediately started unfolding their instruments once they landed, and they were comparing it to NASA, who took, a whole day to do it.
Well, and that's something you're going to see in a bureaucracy. It's just safety. Sure, you could unfold everything right out the gate as soon as it lands and the dust settles, or you can, take your time, go step by step, and go down the checklist. Like, I know Russia has the record for the fastest rocket not fastest rocket, but the fastest from launch to docking with the ISS. Something that, we could absolutely do just as fast. It's just we have all of our safety standards in place to make sure that nothing happens from launch to connection.
I have a question to pose to you, and I don't know if you know the answer, but I'm hoping that you can educate me a little bit.
I can try.
I was thinking about flying in space. Most of these vehicles are going at like 17,000 miles an hour.
Yes.
That one is crazy considering how fast we travel on Earth. But my question is this: how is it possible to travel that fast? Is it because there's no gravity?
Yes. So speed is relative. Um, like theoretically, if you had a ship and you were on it and you had enough theoretical propulsion to slowly get yourself up to light speed, your body would not feel the effects of it. Because your body is only feeling, especially in space, your body's only feeling the effects of thrust. Because once you're weightless, you're traveling at the same speed of the ship, so you can float around, do whatever, even at light speed, and you wouldn't feel like you were going at light speed. Same is true with the space station. They're going, 1,700 miles per hour. I don't. That sounds slow.
Well, most of the satellites are pushing like 17,000.
So yeah, the ISS speed is 4.76 miles per second. And
Yeah.
again, so not to sidebar, but to bring up a point. Have you ever watched The Expanse?
No.
It's a show that Sci-Fi picked up, not Sci-Fi, Amazon picked up. I think Sci-Fi had it originally. That deals with space as related to, it's a show about space, but the physics in the show are amazingly accurate. And one of the things that the show deals with is high G maneuvers. So if we were to take the theoretical ship that could get to light speed, and if you put a rocket that could get you to light speed from 0 to light speed in a minute, you would be goo at the back of the ship the
Correct.
second the engine's turned on. And that's why speed isn't, or not speed, but G's are important. Because if it's a slow burn, you're going to feel the effects, but it's not going to be that crushing, like you're trying to take off or going, you know, into space. Whereas if
Well,
you have a high powered burn, you're going to feel it a lot more.
because I don't know what the astronauts are feeling when they go up in a spaceship, but I have to imagine that's even pretty intense.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, you haven't been on a plane, have you?
I have.
Oh, I haven't. But I would assume it's the same thing. Like you feel takeoff, but once you're, up at altitude and cruising at however 100 miles per hour the plane goes, you're not feeling that effect because you're traveling at the same speed of the plane, correct?
Yes.
So it's similar to that. You're going to feel that initial thrust, you're going to feel the gravity changing, but you're not going to, once you get up to speed and you're coasting at the same speed, you're not going to feel like you're going that fast.
Hmm. I just was thinking about it. I saw one of the numbers that came out was like 17,000 miles an hour, and I said that seems ridiculous to me. You should be a pile of goo at that speed.
I mean, in gravity, you probably would be. Um, and that's not even the fastest. Yeah, Voyager's going 35,000 miles per hour.
Ah, that's insane.
And I'm assuming, why is everything so different? Yeah, they're both going about 35,000 miles per hour. And I don't even think that's the fastest spacecraft either. Because I know
And I
there's, yeah, the Parker Space Probe. Um, Go ahead. I'm looking for the speed.
oh, I was just saying I know that it's all relative to gravity, but I'm curious then to see what that would be like on Mars, who has such a less atmosphere compared to us.
So the Parker Space Probe was 335,000 miles per hour,
That's not a real
roughly.
number to me.
And that's only because it was using the sun's gravity, so it was flying towards the sun, and obviously you're flying towards something that massive, you're going to get the gravity pull of the planet, so it's going to pull you in, so you're going to end up going way faster.
Well, do you think that, just once again, theoretically, if you had enough fuel in your rocket, you could potentially go infinitely fast, correct?
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was saying that if you were in a rocket ship and you had an infinite amount of fuel that you could burn, you could potentially go infinitely fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, theoretically up to light speed, as our physics understand it. Um, and that's a question that gets posed, or I've seen posed before, is that once you get into, if you had enough fuel, and right now the best fuel would potentially be ion thrusters, and you had enough of it and you could accelerate, you could eventually get to light speed. It would take forever, but you could do it.
Well, I don't think I want to travel at light speed, so I'm going to go ahead and just stick to what I know.
You would become a time traveler.
Yeah, well, I've
I mean,
already said I do that every twice a year with the time change. That's enough for me.
it wouldn't be the fun type of time traveling, but it would be time travel. Because you've heard that theory, right?
Which one are you speaking towards?
Um, the faster you're going relative to Earth. So if we had that spaceship that could get to light speed, and you went 1 light year out and came 1 light year back, to you it would only be 2 years that you were gone. And I think the show or the movie, uh, it's not Gravity. What's the other space one that came out not too long ago?
I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm not sure.
Oh, this is gonna bug me. But they dealt with it as well, whereas it would be 2 years for you for the travel, but 20 would pass on Earth because time is relative to where you are, and the faster you get to light speed, or the faster you get to the speed of light, the slower time will pass for you. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's kind of a hard concept to grasp because even technically, the astronauts that are on the ISS are traveling at a slower rate than in time than we are. I mean, it's not noticeably different because they're still, you know, relative to Earth and relatively slow in the grand scheme of things, but they're essentially traveling in time.
Well, and that begs the other question too of how humans will adapt if we do go to Mars, how they will adapt because a Mars year is definitely different than an Earth year. And everything we've kind of done is based off of what we know here on Earth. So things might change for the astronauts who would be going to Mars.
I don't think time would be the biggest issue if you really wanted to think about it like that. Gravity would definitely be an issue because it's only what,
I think it's third, one
is it a
third.
third? Yeah. So gravity would be the biggest difference. Is anyone, let's say you send a colony up, and the first people that are born on Mars are gonna end up adapting way differently than people on Earth. I mean, they could be walking sooner. They could be,
Well, you certainly
strength
wouldn't.
wise,
Yeah,
like,
you wouldn't need the same strength to be able to move around.
well, and to do the everyday objects or tasks that we do. And that's another topic that Expanse covers, is that because there's people living on Mars and Earth, but the Martians, the people who live on Mars have a much lower tolerance to gravity, because if you live on Mars, your bones are just going to start developing differently, because although there's gravity, there's not a lot. So anyone that would come from Mars to Earth would be like, you're increasing the gravity you feel by threefold, essentially.
Well, and that's what the astronauts on the ISS talk about is they come back, they have a lot of things that they have to do while they're up there. Otherwise, their bones essentially start to deteriorate because they kind of say, oh, well, I don't have to support all the weight that I was supporting this whole time. So I'm just going to, adapt to what I have. And then the astronauts come back to Earth and, it takes them a day or two to go, oh, this is gravity. I remember this, but,
Yeah.
everything's heavy again.
Well, and have you seen the videos of them, uh, like on talk shows or whatever, and they go to explain something, and they're holding a pen up, and then they let go of the pen, thinking that it's going to stay right there.
Oh, yes.
And that's, yeah. ISS is a little bit different because there is no gravity at all. So if people were to be born in space, it would be definitely a lot different than people born on Mars versus people born on Earth. Like, if I had to guess, I would think that babies born on Mars would, well, no, I wouldn't say they would potentially walk faster, because the babies would just be used to being in that low of gravity.
Yep. Just
And
like, could you imagine if we were in on Titan where it's double the atmosphere, then you would have some really strong people.
some Dragon Ball Z Goku-esque training.
Yes, yeah. Somebody like you or me would probably fold in half.
Well, I don't think so. Well, double gravity, it would be difficult, but I don't think it would necessarily be undoable. Undoable?
Well, you know what I'm saying though.
Yeah,
It's just it would be you would take the first step out and just be like, "Holy crap."
like the Futurama episode.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, it would definitely mean that people, like, let's say we start something on Titan. People born on Titan would have to very quickly adapt to that level of gravity, which would mean that when they came back to Earth, well, a good example would be distance runners. There's a reason why the Olympic Training Committee has their training center in Colorado. It's because
Altitude.
the altitude. There's less oxygen, there's less, everything. So that when, you're training athletes here and in the mountains, their bodies are getting used to working off less oxygen and working off, you know, I wouldn't say higher gravity, because I think technically we're less gravity, but not significant. But yeah, and then when you go down to surface level, what's the word I'm looking for? Sea floor,
Sea level.
sea level. That's it. Oh, yeah. So when you go down to sea level, and all of a sudden, you have all this extra oxygen that your body just is not used to. It's able to perform a lot better than it would have done had you not trained in higher altitude. Like
I imagine on Titan my golf drive would be absolutely terrible. I would feel
20 feet.
emasculated. Yes.
Whereas on Mars, you'd be able to Happy Gilmore it halfway, nailing those 700 yard par fives.
Well, yeah, because I drive like 350 here, so you figure I'm gonna get at least 800.
That, you know, that would be, I wouldn't say a great reason to go to Mars, but it would be an interesting reason to go to Mars. Improve your golf game.
Why are you going here? I just want to drive a golf ball, just to see how far it goes.
There was someone that did it on the moon, and I'm spacing the name.
Oh, it was Arms. No,
It wasn't
maybe not
Armstrong.
Armstrong. It was
Uh,
ah, somebody did it on the moon. I can't think of who
Alan
it
Shepard.
was. But, oh, Shepard.
Yeah, which I can only assume it went extremely far.
Now, if the moon could get rid of my slice, that would be awesome. I would go play there all the time.
I don't think there's a planet that could help you with that. Maybe Titan, because then if you slice it,
Maybe.
it wouldn't go as far.
Yes, it would not have enough time to slice on Titan.
So we've just spent about 40 minutes talking about space. what,
Yeah.
what was the other
If
stuff we were going to talk about?
oh, we wanted to talk a little bit about that cyber hack that happened this week on the pipeline.
Lead us into that.
Well, we probably won't. We had planned to go kind of in depth and do a whole discussion on it, but with Kirk having issues this evening, I still want to touch on it because it's topical at this moment. But the Colonial Pipeline, which feeds the East Coast with a lot of their fuel, was hit by a ransom attack, cyber attack, and they were forced to shut down for a couple days, which led to a lot of panic buying of gasoline.
Oh,
And
have you? Some of those pictures were just horrifying.
oh yeah, they had to put out like a public service announcement saying, "Please stop putting gasoline in trash bags."
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but gasoline's corrosive and will typically eat through a trash bag.
Yeah, it'll stay in there for, like 10 seconds before it eats right through it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's why they have those red gallon jugs, is because they're rated to hold gasoline. But people were just panicking because everybody was buying all the jugs. So they were like, okay, well, what's next? What do I put it in? Ah, trash bag. Let's put it in that.
I saw someone trying to put it into a laundry hamper.
No,
So,
I mean,
not a closed one, a traditional laundry hamper meant to aerate clothes.
well, all right. Well, when shit goes sideways, people lose their minds and they do stupid things. But that it took a couple of days. They finally got it back online. I think they did end up paying some money in ransom to get control of their systems again.
Well, and
And
that's what I read a little bit about that. And ransomware attacks have been on the rise significantly, um, just due to the fact that they're hard to stop. Once the virus is in the system, your two options are either to dismantle and rebuild everything or pay the ransom and upgrade your security and hope you don't get hit again. And I would assume that's what they did, was they paid the ransom and are going to go through and upgrade everything to not be hit by a similar attack.
well, and from what I can tell, they already figured out who was who was responsible for it. And it kind of led me into the thought of uh, there's a whole like FBI space or cyber task force. They're like the dark web police, and they monitor this stuff so that they can figure out who did it and how to stop them. And I was thinking about it in the respect of automation. I'd kind of brought up at one point, I said, is that going to be an issue if people are automating their whole work uh, space, and you eventually have to download software to these robots, even if it's just once or twice, you do have to give them software updates. And potentially cyber criminals could infiltrate, through those updates if you didn't have a good enough security measure set up. Um,
So
would you think?
y- yes and
Real,
no, because a lot of the attacks that go through and happen are due to antiquated software or technology. So, for example, I'm sure the computers that are used where you work are not exactly the most up to date and reliable.
Maybe not, but hard to
Well,
say.
that's why I was trying to keep it vague. And that's just a factor of corporations, because if you have all these computers that if you have a big corporate company and you have all these computers to go through and rip out all of the ones that are running old or outdated software, especially on dedicated machinery, which is what I'm assuming happened, was a lot of um, old technology that still works runs on antiquated software. And to update that software to more modern versions requires a buttload of money. Like, there's still, and I would 100% guarantee there are still a lot of hospital equipment that runs on XP because it was designed for XP, it runs off XP, and to get it upgraded to, the latest version of Windows would cost more money than it's worth, or just to replace the whole system. So they run this stuff off of old antiquated software, hoping that it doesn't get hacked. And it's usually separated from the net, or separated from more critical structure or critical infrastructure, um, but it's still a vulnerability in the system. Now, like you were saying with the robots or with automation, I would assume that most things that are automated aren't necessarily going to be network connected. And if they are network connected, I would assume that there's going to be a huge push to get these robots that are automated onto their own intranetwork. So a network that talks to itself and talks to computers, but is completely isolated from the greater, World Wide Web, and it's not connected to, the physical internet, or there's a separation between the two.
Well, I'm thinking like look at self-driving. Let's say that delivery vehicles were created and used. You're not going to be able to necessarily. That's going to have to be connected to something. And to
Not
me, anytime there's something connected to something, that's a vulnerability that someone can exploit.
Yes and no. Like I said, it's gonna be connected, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be connected to the greater World Wide Web. I mean, on it in Domino's case, I would assume they will have a satellite connection to corporate or to the store or whatever that monitors and deals with each vehicle that's out there and driving around. I don't think it's going to be directly, like, it would be very hard to hack into the vehicle itself versus hacking into the greater overall company.
It just seems like all it would take was somebody who puts clicks on the wrong email and boom, now you're, downloading kamikaze delivery trucks everywhere.
Yeah, but once again, those are going to be separated from, you're not going to have someone in the potentially in the driver's seat opening up emails. That system is going to be separate from uh, the main. Like, sure, there is a possibility that you could potentially hack into the car or the self-driving car. It's been proven before. I can't remember who. It might have been Might have been Mercedes that got hacked into, but there was a running vulnerability where someone could hack into a running car and shut it off mid driving.
Right. And to me, it seems like people who, if there is a way to screw with something like that, someone's going to find a way to do it and, you know, cause potential chaos like they did with the pipeline on the East Coast. There was a
Well,
lot of damage that went on there.
well, here's a good example. So, and I have to look this up to make sure I'm not speaking out my ass here. Uh, Teslas are arguably the most advanced uh, cars on the road. And yeah, so they have been hacked. I kind of figured they were, but it wasn't a traditional hack where you're sitting behind your keyboard typing frantically as windows pop up and down. Um, in this case, it was a drone flying around with a Wi-Fi dongle that happened to get in range of a Tesla and override some stuff, which has obviously already been patched out. So that's the other end of the spectrum is when you have these things that are constantly connected. Let's say Domino's delivery trucks. They're all connected. They're all, you know, talking to each other and whatnot. If it is discovered that there is a hack or there is a way to hack into it, it will be able to be immediately patched out. And that's why there are groups that work on this type of stuff. They're called White Hat, if I'm not mistaken, where they look for vulnerabilities in software and report it to the software developers.
Well, and it's just food for thought, one of those things that I would think of as looking into going in, as things start to become more automated. People tend to be, you know, sketchy and criminalistic. So you
Well,
give them an opportunity to, fuck things up. That's what they're going to do.
and it's there. A lot of these ransomware attackers kind of are going off the Robin Hood mo of they're targeting rich corporations and not hospitals and the like. Not to say that hospitals haven't been hacked because they have, but the ones that are getting hit with these ransomwares are usually corporations that have money.
I
And
believe, as a matter of fact, I believe Centura up here in Denver got hacked yesterday or the day before. They had to shut down like 5 branches because of a cyber attack.
well, and that's going to happen more and more. And like you said, hospitals are probably some of the worst when it comes to vulnerabilities because, like I said, there is a lot of antiquated equipment running and talking to the upgraded equipment. And it's the antiquated equipment that you can get into, or that is easier to get into, and there's a reason why it was abandoned. Because let's take Windows, for example. Windows provides updates for Windows 10, almost weekly, it seems like, with how often it bugs you to upgrade, or not upgrade, update. And for them to feasibly do that for all past iterations of Windows is, you know, frankly, unrealistic. Now, and that's why they drop support, because no matter how many times they go in and fix bugs or fix stuff, people will always try and find a new way in. Now, on the newer versions, it's going to get harder and harder and harder, theoretically. But on the old versions, because they've been around for so long and people have so much time to work and figure out, that the security risks are just too great for companies running Windows XP or 7, because I think 7 lost support not too long ago too.
You remember my old computer? I'm well aware.
Oh yeah, the one that's definitely not the toaster. I was trying to
Yes,
think something else to say.
I am digging my new computer. It is lightning fast, much much better than the one that I had,
I would
and
hope
it's got
so.
a cool green glowing light on it, which added perk.
Yeah, mine glows green too, but I built mine.
Well, la di da, Mr. Fancy over here built his. No, I'm kidding, but I don't have the brain space to build a computer. I'm sure it's not as hard as I think it is, but you know,
Uh, if you can put Legos together, you can put a computer together. It's
one step above a gorilla here, John. You got to remember that.
but I don't know where else I was gonna go with that.
I'm not sure, but I was gonna say maybe we should go ahead and cut this one short. I do still have a new baby, and with
Well,
Kirk being gone, they I think we did a pretty good job of rambling for an hour, and
considering we hit an hour, yes, I would agree.
hey, we had some pretty good conversation. Space seems to be our forte when it comes to being able to talk. So,
Sometimes.
but hopefully next week we'll be back with Kirk will be back as his own, normal self, and we'll leave it with that. But thank you
Well,
for everybody.
hold on before you cut everyone off or cut
Oh,
me off.
what?
I was gonna say we do have some upcoming things that we would like to share before we end tonight's episode.
I
Um,
apologize. I forgot. I'm sorry.
yeah, no worries. Me and my wife are going to be doing. We don't know if it's a podcast or if it'll just be a short hour-ish long stream during the week when we have time together. Um, we're still working on the details of that. It may start next week. I'm not 100% certain, but there's a good possibility. The other thing is, we are going to be making a movie, Chris included. Um, and I don't know if I feel up to it. I am probably might start that tomorrow. It's just been kind of uh, a tough week per se, and the big benefit of this movie is if I can work out the details, and depending on what happens, it's going to be an open sourced movie, which means that once it's done and finished and uploaded to our channel, and like I said, I'm going to have to look deeper into this to see what other options are available because we're still kind of noodling this idea a little bit. But once it's done and finished, the all the files, everything will be released for anyone to go in, mess around with, or render out themselves, or recut, or do whatever they would like with it. That's the current plan, but it can potentially change.
So what we're trying to do is make a movie that anyone who's listening and wants to go in and make a movie off of our movie or change something, they'll have the ability to go in and do that.
Yep. And that's when I came up with the idea, I was thinking, oh, this would be unique and fun because I am a very big proponent of open source software like Blender or Inkscape or, well, OpenOffice was, but then Apache bought them. But I am a very big proponent of open source. And especially since this will be the first movie that I will have ever created, I think it's fitting to put it out for the community to decide and do whatever they want with it. To redub it, to fix audio, whatever they want to do. And then, since it's open source, it'll be free to use once you've done what you wanted to do with it. And I kind of love that aspect of it. But
Well, it seems like a daunting process to me, but I'm sure I'll be very happy with it once it's all put together.
and it should be a fun experience, especially for me since I've been wanting to do this for damn near a decade now, and I'm finally got all the pieces in place, and I think I'm going to be able to start relatively soon. I'm still working on the script. It's part of the reason why I haven't I haven't done too much on the animation side, is because I've been kind of heavily focused on that this week. And I just think it'll be a very fun, interesting project, especially for our channel and for our community, because that was my whole intent to begin with, was to make a movie that the community can help with. So that'll be starting very soon as well. Like I said, possibly tomorrow, but I'm not holding my breath, and I'm the one that's supposed to be doing it. So we'll just have to see how that one plays out. But I think once I do get started and do get it rolling, I'm going to be probably putting a lot of time into it, and it will all be streamed here on our Twitch channel.
Definitely something we're looking forward to seeing.
But I'm guessing
So
that was all I had. So,
all right, well, I'm gonna, thank everybody for joining us tonight. John, Kirk couldn't be here, as we said earlier. So I did want to leave on a joke that I saw yesterday because it made me laugh. And without Kirk here, I figured I should try and inject one piece of comedy. So here it goes. Baby Roach. Dad, what happens if we get sprayed by Raid? Papa Roach. Suffocation, no breathing.
oh, oh, that's no. Fairness, it's not that bad, but uh,
yeah, that's, hey, I thought it was funny. Maybe other people will too.
I do want to thank the Johnny D for coming to our stream tonight.
He's been here every week. It's good to see him coming around, and
Yeah,
looks like he's a subscriber. So thanks for that.
and we will have emotes and all that stuff once I get it figured out. What was the other thing I was just about to say? Towards the end of our podcast going forward, we will be having the chat interaction and everything after the podcast, and then potentially before our game stream. But with Chris still dealing with baby Ben, it's
Hit and miss.
yeah. But hopefully everything starts going a little bit smoother, and we start having a lot more fun with this. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm tired.
I don't know either. We should have just left on my joke. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. John, I will talk to you shortly.
Yep.
And everybody have a good evening.
Yeah, have a good one.